Hey everyone, Gaming with Two Bros here. Welcome to our first ever non-stream video with one half of the Two Bros, me. Today, I'd like to talk about one of my favorite games, Destiny 2. Let's get to it. If you have never heard of Destiny before, it's a first-person shooter with RPG elements. It's really close to an MMORPG with a lot of its elements, but in its heart, I would say it's a first-person shooter first and RPG second because the gunplay is amazing. As for the premise, you play as a guardian, one of the travelers chosen who has been brought back to life with no memories of your former life. Now, you will be facing enemies of the light to defend the last city on Earth with, essentially, space magic. There is a lot, and I mean a lot more to the story in the game's lore, but an even simpler analogy I usually make is it's basically a story of dark versus light, a bit like Star Wars. The story of Destiny has been weaved for at least 7 years through two iterations, Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. The story is really good, and if you're interested in the lore, I highly recommend checking out some videos from some of my favorite content creators who cover the lore very well in the description. Destiny 2 is a game that is a part of the kind of games we know of as games as a service model, where the games usually have seasons with season passes and also weekly and daily objectives you can complete to reel you back into the game because you always have stuff to do. These kinds of games might throw some people off, and I get it, but since Destiny 2 is free to play, there really is no harm for you to give it a try. So, now you have decided to give Destiny a try. How's the gameplay going to be? As I've mentioned earlier, the gunplay in Destiny is amazing. No wonder, since Bungie is the original developer for Halo, and they have once again nailed the gunplay on Destiny. You will start the game by choosing one of the three classes, Hunter, Titan, or Warlock. Hunters are basically your agile character. Titans are your tank character, and Warlocks are basically space wizards. You also have abilities in the form of class-specific ability, grenade and melee abilities, and the super, which acts like the ultimate ability in games like Dota 2. Destiny is a looter shooter, so the gameplay loop consists of various playlist activities you can do to get loot. Destiny has Vanguard Operations or Vanguard Ops, Crucible, and Gambit as the three core playlists. Vanguard Ops is PvE or player versus environment, Crucible is PvP, player versus player, and Gambit is a mixture of both. You do these activities in order to get higher power loot to level up your power level. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Yes, it is a grind. After reaching a high enough power level, you can then do endgame activities in playlists such as Nightfall or Dungeons for PvE and Trials of Osiris or Iron Banner for PvP to get loot that you can only get from each of these specific activities. They will usually have better stats and or perks. There is one more endgame activity for PvE which we will talk about in a second, but that is the general gameplay loop of Destiny. You do a lot of activities to get loot and level up, and you play more activities to get better loot. Most of the content is match-made though, so you can get by solo, but for some of the endgame content you will need a pre-made fire team, because they require players to communicate in order to clear the activity. You should not get discouraged if you don't have any friends to play with, because you can easily find people to play with through the Fireteam section on Bungie's Destiny 2 app. I have used it to play all of the non-match-made content, and you can do it too. Remember the last endgame activity we glossed over earlier? That activity is the raid. You might be familiar with the term if you play MMORPGs. But raids in Destiny are the most anticipated endgame content which need a pre-made fireteam of 6. And the raid will take the fire team through several encounters to eventually defeat the final boss. Each encounter usually has a mechanic that you have to figure out, such as figuring out the right fuse to hit, which of the boss's eyes to hit, and many variations of a lot of mechanics. Usually what happens is if you fail to do things a certain way, or you take too long to do something, it will cause a wipe, which just means that everybody on your team dies and you have to restart the encounter. And if you notice, I've been saying that the raids have mechanics to figure out, meaning, unlike in Vanguard Ops or story missions, you're not being told what to do, which is why communication is very important in a raid, and probably why it's not match-made. My very first raid was a raid that is no longer in the game as I am making the video. The raid is called the Leviathan, in which you have to come aboard a planet-sized ship and you have to get to the final boss by clearing 3 rooms, each with its own mechanics. Another thing about the raids in Destiny is that they are huge set pieces, and they offer some, if not the best view in all of Destiny. Besides the loot, mechanics, and set pieces, I also like to think that Destiny's raids are also social events. Every time a raid releases, there will be what is called the raid race or world's first race, which you can guess by the name is a race for Destiny players to be the first fire team to finish the raid, which will reward them with the raid exotic, a world's first belt, and obviously bragging rights. Your favorite Destiny YouTubers or streamers will stream that day, and you might just be in the audience for the team that will get world's first. It's such an exciting thing to be a part of. The raid race is no joke though. One of the hardest and arguably the most amazing Destiny 2 raid, The Last Wish, was so hard on day 1 that Team Redeem, the team that got world's first, did so in 18 hours. It just shows how crazy these raid races can be. Although I don't think any other raid race since then has taken that long to beat. It was probably the most amazing 24 hours in Destiny history, and I recommend watching a video that covers that specific raid race, which I will link in the description. The main reason I'm making this video is because the latest expansion for Destiny 2 is here, and with a new expansion comes a new raid. There will be a raid race for the new raid called Vow of the Disciple on March 5th at 10 AM Pacific or March 6th at 1 AM here in Indonesia. This will be my second raid race to watch, and I'm so excited! The raid race might not be the best starting point to jump into Destiny, but it's the Destiny community's Super Bowl. And sometimes it's just fun to see who wins, and maybe witness history as your favorite team get to that final DPS phase, finish the raid, and can then claim to be world's first. Well, we're at the end now, and I hope you've been very patient with how I've been describing my favorite game up to this point. And if you're interested in trying Destiny 2 yourself, I hope you're gonna have a good time just like I've been having for the past 1.5 years. There are a lot of really good people in the Destiny 2 community who will be glad to help you with your quests, story missions, loot grinding, or whatever it is you'd like to do in the game. With that said, thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to hear more of our favorite games, you can click that subscribe button below because we stream various games and we plan to post more of these kinds of videos in the future. So, if you ended up playing Destiny 2 for yourself, I hope to see you in the tower. Gaming with Two Bros out.